The message came through just as I was walking out of a meeting in Berlin. I'd been wrapping up a multi-million euro partnership with a fintech company that would place us at the forefront of European markets when my phone vibrated, and there it was. Subject: The house is sold. I stopped cold in the marble lobby of the Friedrichstrasse building, my heart dropping. My name is Elena Brooks. I'm 35, and for the last 11 years, I've built a quiet but formidable corporate restructuring firm based in Zurich. I've advised governments, salvaged failing brands, and helped clients reclaim billions, but none of that mattered in that moment. The house they sold? It was meant to be mine. We received a strong offer, far better than that modest down payment you contributed, my mother's email said. So, we accepted. Everything is signed. Final. I stood frozen, rereading the words. 5 years of mortgage payments, renovations, insurance. I'd paid for all of it. But the deed? My parents had insisted on keeping it in their name. Just until you're more settled, sweetheart. I was halfway across the world closing the biggest deal of my career, and they'd sold my home behind my back. I stepped into a silent hallway and dialed the number. It rang twice. "Oh, Alina," my mother's voice chimed brightly. "Did you see our email? Isn't it wonderful news?" "Mom," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. That was my house. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she sighed. "Your father and I needed the liquidity. Barton and Co. has been struggling, and you're always jetting around Europe with that little advisory job of yours." Little advisory job. If only she grasped the weight of the documents still tucked inside my briefcase. If only she'd seen the German minister shake my hand and ask for my help restructuring their public pension system. "Where exactly am I supposed to live when I come back?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Oh, you can stay here. Your old room is just as you left it. It'll be like when you were 17 again." As if that were a comfort. Back then, I endured constant comparisons to my brother Marcus, their golden child, now COO of the very company they'd just admitted was failing. Back then, I was told to be practical, to marry well, and to let Marcus manage the family business. I had built everything without them, and they'd still taken from me. "I have to go," I said, ending the call before returning to the conference room where the deal awaited my signature. I looked down at the folder. In 2 weeks, Barton and Co. would face a full-scale audit from a mysterious new consultancy hired by their newest board member, the one who had just acquired their largest competitor, my firm. They had sold my house, but soon they'd learn exactly who they sold it to. And when they walked into their own boardroom next quarter, nervously straightening their suits, they'd be staring across the table at their new boss. Sometimes revenge doesn't need raised voices or a courtroom showdown. Sometimes it's simply a perfectly timed merger and a quiet seat at the head of the table. While my parents were busy selling my house to prop up their collapsing logistics company, I was in Berlin silently executing the most ambitious corporate acquisition of my career. You see, Barton and Co., the company my parents built and worshipped, wasn't just in trouble, it was in free fall. And I knew exactly why. For the past 18 months, through a web of shell companies and carefully masked holding firms, I'd been purchasing their debt. Piece by piece, step by step. Every overdue supplier invoice, every unpaid interest charge, they all quietly ended up in my hands. They believed I ran a small boutique advisory firm out of Zurich. In reality, I was Elena Brooks, CEO of Veritas Capital, one of Europe's most aggressive acquisition firms, specializing in distressed asset takeovers. We didn't simply save companies. We restructured them, dismantled them, and absorbed them into something stronger, or far more profitable. My phone buzzed again. A text from Marcus. "Mom told you about the house." "Sorry, sis, but business is business. Business is business." They'd used that phrase to excuse everything. When they refused to co-sign my student loan because Marcus needed seed funding, when they liquidated my childhood savings to cover a payroll gap without telling me, and now when they sold the home I'd paid for because the company came first. I replied with a simple, understood, then turned to Lucas Hoffman, my Berlin legal partner. Are the contracts finalized? I asked in German, a language I'd learned years earlier while shadowing a turnaround in Frankfurt. Another chapter of my life they knew nothing about. He smiled. Everything is ready, Frau Brooks. By Friday, you'll control 78% of Barton & Co. I signed the final documents with the same calm certainty my family always mistook for weakness. This wasn't just a deal. It was a reckoning. In a few weeks, I would legally hold controlling interest in Barton & Co., the very company they had sacrificed everything for, including me, including my home. I turned to my assistant. Book me a flight to London, I said. It's time I paid my parents a visit. The following weeks blurred into executive briefings, internal audits, and asset valuations. I moved into a penthouse overlooking the Thames, ignoring every call from my mother, every desperate email from Marcus. Let them think I was grieving a house. Let them believe I was still the overlooked daughter in Europe with her little firm. They had no idea what was coming. The morning everything aligned, I stood before the mirror in my suite. My tailored navy blazer was crisp, my hair pinned with quiet precision. The woman staring back wasn't the disappointment they dismissed. She was the storm they never saw approaching. Briefcase in hand, filled with the final documents securing my control, I headed to Barton & Co's London headquarters, the same building where my father once told me, "You'll never understand real business, Elena." As I walked through the revolving doors, a security guard gave a polite nod. "Welcome back, Miss Brooks. Funny how things change." He was already on Veritas Capital's payroll, just like several key executives in the company they still thought they owned. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. Floor by floor, I replayed everything. The years of being brushed aside, the eye rolls at my ideas, the lectures, the lies, the betrayal of selling my home. It had all led here. When the doors opened, I stepped into the familiar hallway lined with portraits of the company's founders. I heard my mother's laugh echo from the boardroom, light, forced, uneasy. They were already gathered, my parents and my brother Marcus, likely discussing the sudden anonymous takeover. I adjusted the cuffs of my blazer and walked forward. It was time for the real Elena Brooks to be properly introduced. Just outside the boardroom, I paused as my father's voice rang out, firm and irritated. "This has to be a mistake. An unknown firm can't just sweep in and buy Barton & Co. We built this company from the ground up." "I've checked it 3 times," Marcus replied. "Veritas Capital owns 78% of our stock. They've absorbed most of our debt, too. We're legally required to meet their CEO today." My mother added, "Well, I'm sure it's just paperwork. We've handled worse. We always land on our feet." That was when I opened the boardroom door, and every head turned as my father's face tightened with disbelief. "Ilona, this meeting is for board members only. Whatever tantrum you're throwing over the house can wait." I stepped forward, calm and measured. "Actually, I'm right on time." I placed my leather briefcase on the table with a soft click. "The CEO of Veritas Capital is scheduled to meet with you at 10 o'clock. Marcus frowned, glancing at his watch. "Yes, but she's not." "She is." I opened the briefcase and slid the documents across the table. "I'm here. I'm the CEO of Veritas Capital." Silence filled the room. My mother's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. My father's face drained of color. Marcus looked like he'd seen a ghost. "That's not possible," he said. "You run a boutique consultancy. You can't be this." My father cut in. "Can't be what exactly?" I asked, tilting my head. "Competent? Ambitious? Too much of a disappointment to outgrow your entire legacy?" I spread the papers neatly across the table. You'll find everything is in order. Veritas Capital holds majority ownership of Barton & Co., including the controlling board seats. As of this morning, I am your superior. My father reached for the documents, his hands shaking. This is some kind of joke. No, this is a lesson in what happens when you underestimate the wrong daughter. I said it evenly, like the joke of selling my house without asking, or borrowing from my education fund without a word, or calling me a failure while I was quietly building a multinational acquisition firm right under your noses. My father opened his mouth, but my mother spoke first. We needed that money for the company. Right, I replied, my voice sharp but controlled. To protect your legacy? I looked around the room and let out a short laugh. Take a good look, Mom. This isn't your legacy anymore, it's mine. Veritas Capital doesn't just rescue failing companies. We restructure them. And Barton & Co. us? You've been bleeding it dry for years. You can't do this, my father said, his voice cracking. We're your parents. I met his gaze. Business is business, remember? I let the words linger, the same ones they'd used to dismiss me my entire life. I turned to the board, several members barely hiding their smirks after years of enduring my family's arrogance and incompetence. Today, they were watching the balance shift. As of today, we're making changes, I announced. Marcus, you're relieved of your role as COO, effective immediately. His jaw dropped. Dad, you're stepping down as CEO. And Mom, your position as head of communications is no longer required. You're firing us? Marcus choked. Your own family? I remembered the birthdays missed because they needed me to cover phones, the vacations canceled for just a little help, the way they laughed at my first investment pitch like it was a child's project. No, I said. I'm offering you what you gave me, a chance to earn your place. I opened the personnel folder. Marcus, there's an entry-level opening in accounts receivable. My mother gasped. Dad, we need door-to-door sales reps for a new regional push. He looked sick. And Mom, the front desk could use a receptionist with a warm smile and a reliable memory. Her hands flew to her face as she broke down. Or, I continued, closing the folder, you can clear out your desks by 5 p.m. Your choice. You ungrateful, my father started. I raised a hand. Careful. You're speaking to your boss now. I gathered my documents and turned to leave, but paused at the door. Oh, and about my house. The one you sold? They looked up sharply. I bought the development company that purchased it. The deed will be back in my name by tomorrow. The looks on their faces were priceless. The kind disbelief money can't buy. Pure shock wrapped in poetic justice. After years of being dismissed, mocked, and written off, I had reclaimed everything they'd taken and more. I turned to the board. Meeting resumes tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. Be prepared with your departmental updates. Then I glanced back at my family. For those of you still employed, the rest can collect personal belongings with security. I walked out with my head held high, my authority fully intact. No longer the invisible daughter. No longer underestimated. My heels echoed against the marble floor, sharp and final. Behind me, I could hear everything unraveling, my mother's muffled sobs, my father's furious shouting, Marcus's stunned silence. But for the first time in 35 years, their noise didn't reach me. They couldn't touch me anymore. I had built something they never believed I could, something they never wanted me to. And now, standing at the peak of my own success, I had finally shown them exactly who I was. Not the daughter they dismissed or the fallback they ignored, but the force they never saw coming. My phone buzzed. A message from Lucas Hoffman in Berlin. Glückwunsch, Frau Brooks. How did it go? I smiled as I stepped into the executive elevator. Better than expected. Time to rebuild Barton & Co. my way. As the doors closed, I glanced once more at the company's logo etched in brass. They had chosen that name, that building, that image over me again and again. Now they could watch as I turned it into something far beyond anything they were ever capable of creating. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving them wrong, it's showing them exactly what they failed to see all along. I stepped into the London breeze, the building now mine, a symbol of everything they tried to keep from me. The next morning, I settled into the leather chair in what used to be my father's office, sunlight cutting across the desk and catching my reflection in the glass behind it. My office now. I picked up the morning paper and laughed softly. The headline read, Veritas Capital acquires Barton and Co. Mission. CEO reveals identity in boardroom shakeup. Unknown CEO. If only they knew. If only they understood how long I'd been building this moment. The years of study, silence, and precise moves. The anonymity they mocked had been my greatest weapon. To them, I was just the daughter with a little consultancy in Switzerland. But that's the power of being underestimated. It gives you perfect cover to strike while they're looking the other way. I picked up my phone and dialed. Hi, Clara. Yes, I'd like to list a property. The townhouse on Wrenhurst Lane, the one recently sold by the Brooks family. I paused. Oh, don't worry. I own it now. Bought the holding company last week. Listed at market value. No family discount. I leaned back, the line still open. Sometimes karma arrives as a scandal, sometimes as a lawsuit. And sometimes she walks into your boardroom in heels, holding the deed to everything you once owned. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told you couldn't, you know this feeling. And if you've made it this far in my story, thank you, truly. Because this was never just about a company or a house. It was about reclaiming my voice, my worth, and everything they said I couldn't have. If you've ever been doubted, dismissed, or labeled a disappointment by your own family, maybe part of this journey felt familiar. Leave a comment, not just for me, but for anyone else who needs to hear it. Have you ever been underestimated by the people closest to you? Have you ever worked in silence building something extraordinary while others only saw failure? I want to hear your stories. Let's remind each other that quiet strength is still strength, and you don't have to shout to be powerful. You just have to keep going. And if my story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. Not just because it helps me share more, but because every subscriber is one more voice saying, I believe in people like Elena, people who rise not out of spite, but out of purpose. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't owe anyone proof of your potential. You only owe it to yourself to become everything they said you couldn't. Work hard. Move smart. Be patient. Because the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming the version of yourself they never imagined possible. And when that moment arrives, walk into the room like you own it. Because maybe, just maybe, you do.